Thank you. Thank you, India Bioscience, for creating this platform and opportunity for all of us to come together, reflect. I think once in a while, people who are engaged in this kind of activities coming together and reflecting, sharing experience, even if we have differences, sharing that difference would enable us to become a better professionals, better deliver what we want to do. Because in most of our case, I think even if it is what is giving us bread and butter, there is also huge amount of passion. All of us have passion. This is not some kind of a 9 to 5 job that most of us are engaged in. So therefore, I think this kind of platforms are really very important. And so I should say a big thank you to India Bioscience for providing, enabling such a platform. So what I propose to do is share some slides and then highlight some issues that I think are key important with regard to communicating science in Indian languages. So let me share. Give me a second. Uh, yeah, I think we are seeing the slides, right? Okay. So welcome. Yeah. Okay. So I don't think I need to elaborate this to our group. Like, why do we do science communication? So I won't elaborate on these points. But just for recollection, one is it is only through science communication that we are creating informal spaces. We are continuing learning spaces, which are essential for 21st century, because people always say that 21st century education is continuing education, learning society, and these are buzzwords. If you want a learning society, you need public spaces where informal learning can take place, and science communication is going to be a very important point. Same way, there are challenges which, as human society, we have to come together and make informed decision if we want to be a democracy. I hope most of the people are, at least I hope that all of the people who are part of this discussion today would be in favor of democracy and not some kind of aristocracy. Okay, so public policies like, let's say, climate change or vaccine or cyber security, or what are the carbon zero energy options? Who makes this decision? Is it some policymaker sitting at some headquarters, or do individual citizens have, collective citizens have some role to play? If so, then that they have to be informed decision. So I think science communication in 21st century also becomes important from this point of view. And plus, of course, given the fact that all around us we see violence based on sectarianism, the necessity for developing, nurturing scientific temper, humanism, and spirit of inquiry, I don't think we need to underline that, underscore that. And if we have to become actually a 21st century citizen, we need to embrace a new worldview, which will be eco-centric plus human-centric plus, all those things. So we do need science communication. I don't want to elaborate on this. I think we all know it. Just for brushing up, I thought I'll go. Coming to languages, let's say, for example, India. I'm suppose in this platform, we are looking at Indian languages. So if you look at this kind of numbers that you see, okay, so you may have a very dominant language, which has something like about 40, 50%. But can that focus on 40, 50% is adequate? If you ask that question, that's not true, because these are all area specific. So if you concentrate only on, let's say, big languages, you will miss out a huge portion of India. So which essentially means that you need to communicate in multiple Indian languages, not just what is there in Schedule 8 of Indian Constitution, but one needs to go beyond. Let's There are something like 19,569 languages and dialects which are listed in the last language census, which was held in 2011, of which 121 have more than 10,000 speakers. Sure, all languages we should respect, but if one has to be practical, and then one says that, okay, one would look at some languages which have huge numbers, even then you have hundreds of languages. That's what I wanted to emphasize. And some of the languages, like say, for example, Beel, is the population which speaks Beel is double that of the population that speaks Norwegian. So if one talks about science communication in Norwegian, it's a double time if you are going to talk about, let's say, Beel. Uh, if you look at Gondi, one tribal language, one of the oldest languages in the world, it's a half of Norwegian. So if you look at any typical European country, many of these languages which we think are small from our point of view are actually number of speakers are more than a typical small European country. I think we need to keep this mind. So if you look at non-scheduled languages, that is, which is not part of the Indian Constitution declared as official Indian languages, there are 10 non-scheduled languages which are million speakers, and 31 which has more than a lakh speakers. Okay, so which essentially means that something like about 60, 70 languages are minimum if we are going to talk about really reaching everyone, leaving no one around. That's a number that we are talking about, right? Okay, so challenges. I want to divide these challenges into three parts. One is a technical term and standardization. Second is development of scientific language. And third is a structural challenge. Let me explain so I think I'll be clear what I mean by these things. Technical words, I'm sure all of us will talk about, but I would like to emphasize a different point. It's not that, for example, for some esoteric scientific terminology, I can't easily remember, let's say, a technical word in Tamil. That's not the point. Okay, that's the simplest of problem. The problem is, how does technical language develop? Let's take, for example, a technical word like force in English. The force in different contexts, as we know, as a technical word, has distinct meaning. Okay, it can mean physical strength or power. It can mean power or influence in a different context. For example, in sociology, okay, when one talks about, let's say, Althusser or sociologists of that kind, the force has a very different meaning over there, right? It can mean police force if one talks about organizational stuff. If one talks about physics, of course, it's equal to MA. We also use words like evolutionary force, right? So the force also comes into a different domain. So if one makes a Tamil equivalent or an Indian language equivalent, how are we going to deal? That's the question that one needs to focus, and not just simply some simple thing like, okay, that's an English word, I don't have a Tamil word or a Kannada word. That's not the problem. The problem is this: how do we look at the technical word interconnections and then build a vocabulary? That's the correction. Second, we use multiple technical languages. New technical languages are emerging one by one. Okay, uh, how do we get words for it? Okay, as they emerge. And then now, if you look at, for example, graphene NAS2, okay, how do I deal that in Tamil? For example, NAS2, how do I deal that in Tamil? These are all, I think, some challenges that we need to think about and then address this one. Having talked about the issue of technical word, I would like to move to the language. Okay, my second point. So, if you look at the scientific English, What I mean is that English used for writing signs or communicating signs. The words change. Okay. The gravity gets modified as gravitational, gets modified as gravitating. What happens to an Indian language word? Can they be modified like this? Is it modifiable? Without modification, would you be able to communicate these aspects? These are the kinds of language, scientific evolution of scientific language challenges that we have. So let me elaborate various areas of scientific language challenges. This is one. The second is sentence structure. Let's look at, for example, a typical sentence which I have picked up from a popular science book on relativity. Okay, here is a sentence with 54 words. Okay, that red colored one is a single sentence with 54 words. One might say that the writer is a bad writer. The writer should have done small sentences. Really so. I mean, we should think about it for a second. The complex sentence in scientific writing in English comes essentially because of the complex nature of interconnections which are there in the sciences. So, how do you handle this? If I are to, let's say, translate or transcreate that in Tamil with the same density, okay, density, how do we do that? What kind of sentence structures changes are required in our Indian languages is a question that we need to think about. Then analogies. For example, whenever we write, we knowingly, unknowingly, as a part of our communication, we use. Okay. Let's say, for example, in this particular first para, you find bunny ears, okay, or glass vase. Are they, for example, something that will be relatable to a Indian audience or an audience in a Indian language? Uh, for example, DART, this double asteroid mission of NASA. So it says that it's a size of golf cart. So would the golf cart make any meaning to Indian audience? This is a question. So whenever we are presenting this information, how do you analogize to an Indian audience? That's a question. Similarly, there are cultural allusions to our writing, right? For example, lying won't stretch your nose. I mean, most of us who are, let's say, grown up with reading certain kind of English children literature will immediately, to us, it will make sense. But what about a person who is not growing up with that kind of a children's literature? Even somebody who knows English but living in India. Okay. And what about when you do this in Indian languages? Okay. So there are cultural allusions which we should be aware of, which are part of the way we communicate science. And how do we deal that is another language related challenge. And for example, here the DART. I mean, I assume that most of this audience who are there present today will know what is this DART mission, that it's a spacecraft which was intentionally crashed on an asteroid to change its path, to see that in case if tomorrow, if there is a asteroid that is headed towards Earth, whether you can deflect it by impact method. So that was a study. So here the smashing success is actually a pun, right? So because you are actually smashing that DART spacecraft on that asteroid. So the smashing success, just one second. The smashing success is a pun. So what happens to our Indian languages? How do we write science in Indian languages? Do they have this pun so that when a person reads it, it will give that person reading experience? Or is it like a textbook, uh, 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 very, let's say, insipid? How is our writing? Are we able to bring in these aesthetic elements of language into our Indian language? That's another challenge that I think one has to think about. If we are looking at, let's say, creating a reading habit, that science reading would become a enjoyable activity, not just some kind of a pedagogical activity, but as some kind of a personal enjoyment, some kind of a aesthetic experience. Then we need these layers in our language. Uh, Same way, cultural cosmos. Okay, here is a small excerpt from again an article. For example, Siri can tell us who won last night's baseball. So, how many of us would know baseball? Okay, so there are such cultural issues which are part of it. This is one aspect. Now, let me move to another aspect. Over a period of time, because English or German or some of these languages have been used for communicating modern science for hundreds of years, you see development of a certain vocabulary. Okay. I've just put a logical semantic relationship vocabulary here. Maybe I'll just pick up one and then kind of give a illustration. Let's say, for example, temporal. Okay, let's take this word temporal. Here is the word temporal. So I'm sure all of us would have come across this word temporal in different disciplines that we are clear of. Can you immediately think of what is a word for this that you would use in our Indian languages or the Indian languages that you use? Yeah. Here, I'm not talking about the lack of word. I'm talking about here there is a logical semantic relationship that the word temporal gives. Okay, which is something like follow, precede, anticipate, co-occur with. This kind of meaning conglomerate. So the scientific language is something that develops. I'm sure, for example, the word temporal would not have meant the same meaning that it means to a English science reader today. Suppose, let's say, you time travel and go back some 600 years and catch up a Englishman and then or Englishwoman or English person, and then tell that person temporal. I'm not sure that person is going to have the same meaning that we would get today. Okay, so the words get meaning over a period of time. So that's what is called as language development. So scientific language development in Indian languages needs more effort, more work. That this is one area. Without this, we will not be able to communicate uh, deep substance. We'll be able to say information, but if we really want to communicate the nuances of science, its varied layers, uh, we will fail it. That's one. Then, if you look at what happens because of the way we do science, modern science, and the way we view the world through modern science, the language itself experiences what is called as nominalization. Okay, so the scientific languages theorizes concrete life experiences into abstract entities. So, for example, inflation needs to be curbed, but the curb must be based on systematic measure. Even minor delays in parasites' life cycle can have important effect on transmission rates. So, in these sentences, you would see that the words like curb becomes a nominal word. I mean, it becomes a noun, right? Rather than being a verb, it's now a noun. Okay, so that is it is changing. Okay, it's changing its character. Because it's a noun, now you can use the word in a particular way, right? So you get a particular kind of sentence structure, a particular kind of meaning. So likewise, the process affect is a process, right? Or delay or transmit has now become a noun, right? So this is something that is happening in scientific English language. So in Indian languages, how does it work? How do you build it? How do you create it? Is a question. Okay. So the verb grow can be trans-categorized to a noun growth. Okay, the growth of epicormic shoots. So basically there it's a noun. Okay, it's not a verb there. Okay. Uh, Words like, for example, motion, it's not synonymous with something which is moving, right? So the motion is not, motion is now a thing, something that you can measure, right? Similarly, for example, distance is not something being far. Okay, it's again now a metric, right? So there are this changes which happens to these technical words at the language level. That's something that if one looks at developing science literature in Indian languages, one should focus on, one should think about, one should reflect on. So there are some kind of objectification that is happening in the language in addition to nominalization. That is, actions and events and also qualities are now being treated as if they are objects. For example, the motion, which is action, now is being treated as an object. Okay. So the relation between events can be now constructed as events themselves. Okay. We did this, then happened. That becomes in our scientific writing. This action of ours was followed by that event. Okay. The way we express in science. So there are these language changes that are happening, which we should be alive. Many of us are not alive simply because through our acculturation to the modern science, that is when we were part of our master's or PhD program, we somehow imbibe this language culture, but not consciously. So now that we have to do it in Indian language, there is a need for reflection on this, is a point that we need to think of. Same way, for example, you can look at some taxonomic issues. Like, say, for example, in this paragraph, I won't again read it. I think by looking at it, most of us would be familiar. There are three tires we are talking about. One is a cell cycle, second is a phase, third is a stage. Now, tell me what will be the word that you will use in Kannada or Malayalam or Bengali for these three. If you use the same word for describing each of this, would we make sense? Would it be still sensible? So these are some deep questions in language that one should think about. Uh, uh, Next is sorry, once again. Sorry, once again. The next is lexical density. That is a number of technical words which are part of a single sentence. Okay. So in English, a lexical dense sentence doesn't seem unnatural. But even today, a lexically dense sentence in Indian language to most of us would look very artificial, right? So how do you handle that? So which would mean that if I want to make a Tamil write-up, my write-up naturally becomes expanded because I cannot write a lexically dense sentence in Tamil because that sentence would look so artificial. People would say that I don't make head or tail of it, okay, because we are not cultured to it, right? So this is one challenge one faces when we think of writing science in Tamil or Indian languages. Similarly, ambiguity. Okay. So the ambiguity of science, that there are a lot of things that in science is actually tentative, so they are suggestive, is indirectly cued by the kind of words and sentences that we use. For example, if you look at increased responsiveness may be reflected in feeding behavior. Lung cancer death rates are clearly associated with increased smoking. This will be very normal in a science writing, right? I mean, most of us will be familiar. Higher productivity means more supporting services. So the word reflected, associate with, mean, do they imply cause? right? So I'm not using the word cause, okay? But imagine that you are going to write these sentences in your mother tongue. What would be the word that you would use? What would be the word that you will use to give this nuance of ambiguity? Okay, this is another challenge. Okay, so now this is the second point that I was talking till now, which is about the language. The language in terms of the need for the language to change, the need for language to become the scientific language in Indian languages to become a aesthetic experience, the kind of handling, the kind of necessity to let's say within quote discover words. For example, the reflected few hundred years ago would not be this same thing, right? Reflected would have never been used in this particular context. Reflected would have been used most likely, let's say, a philosophical reflection or light reflection, only in those contexts. But over a period of time, English language has started using that word reflected in a particular meaning. So, in the same way, what kind of words we can pull out from our Indian languages to provide us this support are one challenge. Last part is how do we create and sustain Indian language science communication? That's a point that I want to come to. From my experience, see, sometimes experience is a prison. Okay, so if you live only based on experience, then you will live only in past. You will never go to future. I know that limitation, but still, based on my experience, what I feel is today in India, in no Indian language, there is a enough market demand to sustain the Indian language science community. So, media houses are not willing to pay for it. They think that there is no return on investment. Okay. If I have a sports program, if I have a culture program, if I have let's say, reality program, they think that there is a return on investment, advertisement will come forward. But if you spend on science, there is nobody, no advertiser is going to come forward. This is a overall general feeling within the media. Okay. But if you actually go and look at the public, okay, broad people, there is a want. So we know from our experience of running India Science Fair, when we started, everyone told us that you are going to be utter failure. Nobody wants to read science in India. But that was false. When we actually ran the India Science Fair, we found that there were a lot of small and medium newspaper which were actually going to the within quotes the lower rung of population. There was demand. Why would that fellow publish this news if there was no interest from that readership over there, right? So, but they were publishing, not only publishing, they were demanding. If we fail to send, they will call us and say that today's dispatch has not come to us. So, there is a want, there is a readership at the lower level. Uh, uh, but the media still doesn't seem to capture it and feel that there is a need. Okay. So some efforts, for example, in Hindi, a organization called Eklavya was running a news feature service called Stroth. They will collect Hindi writing and then distribute it to different publications. Similarly, the India Science Fair, we used to create science news every day and then distribute to various media agencies. These show that these kinds of models are viable. So these kinds of models build readership. They provide a platform and build writers and communicators, science writers and communicators. And then third, most important, I think they also demonstrate that there is a readership, there is a want. So even the media can now think because they see from their experience that there is a want. So if we really want to emerge into Indian languages in a big way, I think effort like this is required. And this essentially, of course, demands that there is some kind of public funding for it. This is not going to come from market or from the existing media network. That's my feeling. Thank you. I suppose the broad points that I thought I will share with you today in this roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It was a wonderful talk, very insightful. And it was interesting to note the rich diversity of the non scheduled Indian languages. I was not aware of those numbers. You also highlighted several everyday challenges in science communication in the Indian languages, particularly analogies, nominalization, lexical density. I'm sure most of us have experienced these, but we didn't know what they were called and why those happened or how to address those challenges. And you very nicely outlined the ways in which we as science communicators have to do a lot more to make sure that there is more readability and reach. I'll begin with one question. So, mostly science communication efforts are towards popularization of science. But how much effort are we really taking to explain the nature of science while communicating in the Indian languages?
So you are asking me to respond or others have to join?
Yeah.
First,
You can respond, and others can also comment.
okay. So I think these are uh, always together. For example, me and my height cannot be actually bifurcated, right? Height is my quality. So without that, talking abstractly, my height doesn't make any sense. In the same way, the nature of science is connected to the science that we communicate. It's not something that is somewhere away or beyond. It's connected to the content in a way. So in that sense, I would say that unfortunately, the kind of problem that I was pointing out, most often, even the science communication in Indian languages becomes mere communication of factoids, nothing more. So actually, you are not communicating science. You are communicating some factoids which you think is science. Okay, so you are not talking about any causal relationship. You are not talking about any cause and effect. You are not talking about any of those things. I mean, they are not the point. You are giving information after information. That's one of the most commonest way one would see that if you look at in abroad. I mean, I'm not talking about people who are writing and who are part of this group, but if I look at, for example, Tamil, the world science publication that comes in Tamil. I mean, if one has to make an evaluation, that's the most common stuff. Yeah.